The Fireside chats at Transforming Transportation are always a great time for us, both of us, me and you, audience, to team up. You've already proved you have much better questions than my questions. I love your questions. Thank you. Keep them coming during our Fireside chat when we're talking about building back better through the lens of the United States. Now, there are always surprises in Transforming Transportation. It is a live event, whether it's all virtual or all in person. And one of those surprises is Annie. Annie, hello.
Hello, good
Annie.
morning.
Well,
Hi.
I was not expecting to see you. Annie, you please introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I'm Annie Petsonk. I'm the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of Transportation for Aviation and International Affairs. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning, and I bring my sincere apologies and regrets. Our Secretary, Pete Buttigieg, who had planned to be here, was called away at the very last minute by an emergency, and sends his sincere regrets and also his best wishes for your successful conference. Thank you.
All right, Annie, it's all down on you. It's your responsibility now. This Fireside chat is going to be on fire, hopefully, between me and you. All right, Annie, so when you woke up this morning, what was your plan for your day?
My plan for my day included my favorite form of transportation, which is walking.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And
there is a link.
I would say that also, I don't mean to be flip, but in our department, we have a full, very, very full calendar of events and activities aimed at integrating climate considerations into making transportation more effective, more efficient, and more climate friendly across the board, including across all of our modes of transportation. And the ones that I focus on, especially, which are our relationships with our partners around the world, and also in the field of aviation.
Let's start with aviation, because this is a very tricky area. I know there's a lot of development going on. There's a lot of work. It's like, how do you make aviation greener, more sustainable? Is it even sustainable? And we've learned a lot during the pandemic when people flew a lot less. What is the Department of Transportation's view about aviation? How are they dealing with it?
Well, I'm pleased to report that at the 26th Conference of the Parties to the Framework Convention on Climate Change, COP26, the United States launched our U.S. Aviation Climate Strategy, which includes, for the first time ever, a goal for all of U.S. aviation to have net zero emissions by 2050. This is a really important goal. It's been embraced by our industry, by our airlines, by our manufacturers. The public wants it. The flying public wants it. Large corporate customers of airlines want it. And we're now embarked on a series of activities under that Aviation Climate Action Plan to meet that goal. First and foremost, I would say, are improvements to the aircraft themselves to make flying more efficient. And second is it's very hard to lift a large aircraft off the ground on anything other than a lightweight liquid transportation fuel. So while we're looking to encourage the electrification of short-haul aircraft, for the long haul, we're really looking at sustainable aviation fuel. And there, the president announced a sustainable aviation fuel grand challenge, a challenge to have 35 billion gallons of sustainable aviation fuel by 2050, enough to power our whole fleet. And by 2030, 3 billion gallons of sustainable aviation fuel. So we are working with producers, suppliers, airlines, manufacturers, and the public across the board to try to bring these goals of the Grand Challenge forward.
When you listen and you talk to and you engage with some younger climate activists, they're really adamant that flying is not the way to go. Flying is not helping us with handling the climate crisis. And to be honest, it's the young climate activists that have really reinvigorated our whole approach to the climate crisis. How do you respond to that?
Their concerns are very well founded in the sense that we have got to make aviation sustainable if we want to keep young people going into aviation fields in the future. Right now, we have a pilot shortage, and that pilot shortage is something that our Federal Aviation Administration, as part of the Department of Transportation, is moving to address. But to encourage young people to go into the field of aviation, aviation needs to convince young people that it can be sustainable. And that also goes for travelers. We are seeing a rebound in aviation, in air travel across many different sectors. But corporate travel is coming back a bit more slowly. And that's because many companies have taken on corporate climate commitments, pressed in part by young people and by younger employees who want to be sure that the company overall is going to take and meet climate commitments. So large companies are looking to their airlines to tell them how the companies can return to flying in a sustainable way. And so you're absolutely right. Young people's views on aviation are crucial to the future of the industry. And I think the industry is aware of that. And that's why you see so many airlines, including the International Air Transport Association, the largest association of airlines globally, embracing this goal of net zero by 2050 and a roadmap for getting there.
I'm going to take us further afield and look at how the Department of Transportation is partnering up with other countries, helping them with their innovation, with their sustainability projects, with their own programs of levering transportation, for instance. What can you tell us about that? Because that's not always widely publicized.
You're right. I mean, it's not always widely publicized, and in part because the Department of Transportation does not have its own direct funding for large-scale programs the way some of our sister agencies like USAID, the U.S. Agency for International Development, and some of our other funding agencies do. But we have tremendous technical expertise. And so those agencies, State Department, AID, and other agencies, USTDA and others, come to the Department of Transportation for our technical expertise to work with partners around the world in helping tap that technical expertise in favor of sustainable transport and safe transport. I should say that when I joined the department, the president told us new appointees that we should keep in mind 5 goals: COVID recovery, economic recovery, climate change, equity, and restoring America's standing in the world. And in the Department of Transportation, we do that with safety as our guiding star. So in our technical work, we work with partners all around the world, focusing on safety and then on the transportation goals, including equity and climate. For example, our secretary at the Conference of the Parties at COP26 met with a wide range of countries. And he and his team met with representatives and counterparts from Canada to Trinidad and Tobago, from Ghana, Kenya, the Netherlands, many, many different countries. And we work with those countries through a number of different international partnerships, including international negotiations over standards for safety in road vehicles, just to give one of a number of different examples. We work with partners in the International Maritime Organization, in the International Civil Aviation Organization, and then through a whole series of bilateral partnerships and relationships.
I've got a question from the audience. Because you are a stellar stand-in, Annie, if you can't answer it, it's okay. We will get the answer. I know you'll get the answer and you can bring it back to us. But I'm going to put this to you. It's from Martha Lawrence. It's about the US railway system. And Martha describes it as the only large one in the world that is not substantially electrified. What is the US Department of Transportation doing about that?
Well, Martha, I'm pleased to report that our new bilateral infrastructure law, recently enacted by Congress and signed into law by the president, um, ha- puts forward $66 billion for investment in our domestic rail system. That is the largest investment since the creation of Amtrak. And it also puts forward $100 billion for transit, including electrification. And that's the largest investment in transit in our nation's history. And that will enable us not only to move forward on electrification where electrification is possible and useful, but also to encourage and stimulate multimodal connections. I have been going for many years to the Conference of the Parties to the Framework Convention on Climate Change. And when I go to Bonn, when the meetings are in Bonn, from the United States, I buy a single ticket that puts me on the plane and then on the train. And it's a relatively seamless transition intermodally. We in the United States have a lot to learn from intermodal connectivity in other countries and the investment that we will be able to make and that our states and municipalities will be able to make through the bilateral infrastructure law, bipartisan infrastructure law will help us move forward in that way.
I was just looking to see what the Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, has been up to recently, and he's on a trip to examine what the possibilities are for electrifying vehicles and also the economy, for jobs. There was this quote that I pulled out, which is very bold, very confident. Opportunity, this is an opportunity for America to lead in electrical vehicles. So confident. I love America. You're always great at everything, even when you're not. But there is possibility here. So, there's EVs and electrical vehicles all through his feed, his official Twitter feed. Is this your next big project as Department of Transportation? Are you walking and chewing gum at the same time? You've got multiple projects, but it feels like EVs are up there right at the top.
Absolutely. The bipartisan infrastructure law puts forward $5 billion for a national electric vehicle charging network. And we think that getting this infrastructure of the charging network going will help tip in terms of not only public investment, but private investment. We feel we're at a tipping point, and we see this tipping point happening with the large-scale investment moving forward into electric vehicles, whether those are electric school buses, pickup trucks, passenger cars, across the board, we're seeing this. And the bipartisan infrastructure laws, $5 billion for the electric vehicle charging network, will really help create the spine of a network that can serve our entire country. I should also mention Justice 40. Under Justice 40, 40% of our investments must help serve underserved communities. And so one of the things that we're deeply committed to in the electric vehicle charging infrastructure work is making sure that underserved communities that have suffered from greater pollution at the ground level than other communities, receive the benefits of having cleaner electric vehicles on their streets.
It's really interesting that you say that, because it fits quite nicely into what Daniel Moser, who is watching right now, is thinking. You inspired this question. How would the US Department of Transportation be able to support smaller and mid-sized cities, which often have lower capacities, towards decarbonized and equitable transport? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Daniel, this is a great question. And as someone who comes from a smaller community myself, a community where to get out from our community during the winter time, we had to cross very dangerous, snowy, icy mountain passes. I greatly appreciate the need for smaller and rural communities to benefit from this network. First, a portion of the funding is specifically targeted to help smaller and rural communities access the national charging network. Second, we have a number of programs that serve rural communities and provide things like essential air service to those rural communities. And I'm pleased that in the private sector, there's now great interest in looking at whether air service and road electrification could be thought of in a comprehensive way so that electrical charging infrastructure in rural communities could power not only road transport, but also short-haul aircraft to help keep those communities connected. So it's a great question. And absolutely, given the makeup of the United States with extensive rural areas, we at the department are committed to making sure that our rural areas are served as well.
Annie, you'll be delighted to hear me say finally, because you're doing such a great job of filling in. We should just book Annie next year. All right, Annie. So finally, the President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law is really creative in how it thinks about infrastructure. So much so that a lot of America, when the deal was being discussed, were quite shocked. So clean water that goes through unleaded pipes, that is part of infrastructure. High-speed internet, that is part of infrastructure, not just roads and bridges. Climate action, part of infrastructure. So you know all this. It's all part of this incredible, historic, as the White House calls it, law. What does it do for transportation?
It provides a generational investment across our modes of transportation. As I mentioned, the largest investment in transit in the nation's history, the largest investment in rail since the creation of Amtrak. And one of the things that we haven't had a chance to talk about much this morning, Pema, but I want to highlight is the investment for prioritizing for safer streets. We know that traffic accidents will happen. Humans are fallible. Vehicles are going to get into accidents. How can we work proactively, anticipating rather than reacting to the safety challenges that the vehicles, whether they are bicycles, scooters, cars, and pedestrians, face on roads? We have a shockingly high accident and death rate in the United States and from vehicle accidents, and we are determined to bring that down. And that one of the things that the bipartisan infrastructure law does is it incorporates safety into the conception of infrastructure for transportation across the board. And we are seeing the benefits of that when local communities act proactively. Hoboken, New Jersey did that with prioritizing safer streets, putting in bike lanes, expanding the use of bike lanes, well marking them, and anticipating how drivers react when they see a cyclist or when they see a pedestrian. And by structuring anticipatorily, Hoboken was able to reduce accidents and fatalities significantly across each of these modes. That kind of thinking is built into the bipartisan infrastructure law right from the get-go. And it's part of this broader conceptualization of transportation and infrastructure. And we're really looking forward to working with our states and communities to implement it.
And attendees, if you want to see that road safety plan, go to Secretary Buttigieg's Twitter account. At Secretary Pete, it is. And you'll see pinned right at the top, there's a crisis on our roadways. 3,000 people die every month. During the pandemic, it's gotten worse. And we would never tolerate this on any other mode of transportation, and we shouldn't here. See what the US Department of Transportation are doing and launching, and you can go down through the thread and see that, because road safety is an important part of Transforming Transportation Conference as well. Annie Petsonk, oh my goodness, I salute you. Slid in at the last minute, did a stellar job. You inspired so many more questions than I was able to share with you. Please send Secretary Buttigieg our best and tell him we have an opening somewhere in the next 2 days for him to make up for the fact that he blew us off. All right, I'm just glad it wasn't February the 14th because that would have been too much to bear. Annie, thank you so much. I appreciate you very much from the Department of Transportation in the United States. Thanks for your questions, delegates. Thank you, Annie, for your time.